Welcome to the fifth day of budget hearings. I'm Councilman Kevin Kramer, Chair of the Budget Committee. With me today is my Vice Chair, Marcus Winkler, and other committee members present in chambers include Councilman Herndon, Councilman Lininger, Councilwoman Parker, Councilman Piagentini, Councilwoman McCraney, and Councilmember Reno Weber. I can't see screens to tell if anybody's joining us virtually or not, but I'm told there are none currently joining. Would the clerk please read out the required notice for virtual meetings?
This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A, read in full.
Thank you. We're joined by Councilwoman Betsy Rui as well. The Office of Strategic Initiatives, formerly the Office of Philanthropy, is continuing in FY26 with a proposed $894,200 operating budget. Welcome Director Mariana Barzan, Director Leanne French, and Project Manager Annette Dangerfield from the Office of Strategic Initiatives. The Office of Strategic Initiatives budget reflects a $4,480,000 reduction to Thrive by 5 Early Childhood Learning Initiative. This initiative is supported through the Kentucky House Bill 6, which legislatively required Louisville Metro government to direct all mineral severance tax revenue toward this initiative. FY26 is the final year of this requirement, and I want to start with a question. So we're joined, I believe I mentioned Councilwoman Rui is here. We're joined also by Councilwoman Chappell.
Hello.
Oh, and we're joined online by Councilwoman Woolridge. So let me start off by asking about how many years was this a requirement? And if we're using the state mineral severance tax revenue for this in the past, why did Metro fund $5 million in FY25?
The mineral severance was included in the $5 million last year, and it was they directed it through House Bill 6 for fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26.
Thank you. Angela, a question for you. I believe previously the legislature had earmarked the mineral severance money for Waterfront Botanical Garden, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's correct, but we could get confirmation.
Okay, so they are not receiving the allocation anymore.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I had another separate question, if I may.
Councilman Winkler.
Sorry. So if I think about the totality of your budget, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's basically the $500,000 to Thrive by 5, and then essentially staff salaries. Marina, can you talk a little bit about, outside of Thrive by 5, what is the focus for this coming year for your department?
Sure. Well, we have some projects that we're working on for the mayor that are in the early stages, but we worked on this past year, we worked on the external agency fund enhancements, expanding childcare for LMG employees, facilitating the creation of Bezos Academy Fairdale. We also coordinate city priorities with our local foundations and their giving. And we also work with nonprofits and kind of a conduit between the mayor's office and the nonprofits.
Do you see, given the strategic changes that the mayor has talked about related to the city's support of external agencies and the change in our external agency process? I know, during, I can't remember if it was during his budget address or just in comments around the budget, the mayor basically said, Metro government is not a foundation and that, our nonprofits sort of need to adjust to that. I see your team potentially playing a really critical role there in helping, understand how nonprofits should work with Metro government, particularly as it relates to funding.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you could speak.
Yeah, so sort of aligning the priorities of what the mayor's looking for and what the nonprofits are doing. So we're strategically aligned and getting funding for those initiatives, if that's what you mean, yes. And there's also different projects that come up that he wants us to look into. So it sort of changes every day, and that's why he changed the name of the office from Office of Philanthropy to Office of Strategic Initiatives, to be a little bit more flexible and responsive and sort of more accurately describe what we do.
Thank you. And I have just one last question or comment, and that is, I know, and I'm going to screw up the name of how they have sort of branded this initiative, but I know there is, a whole host of nonprofits in the city that have come together, led by the United Way, to present a plan around housing and homelessness, right? Is your team involved in that, or should they be?
That's a really good question. Currently, we are not involved in that. I leave that up to the mayor, but that's a very good question. Yeah, it's things like that. We do convenings, and that's how the Thrive by Five came about, which was the mayor's early learning action group. 23 community experts and advocates came together to create the plan for early learning in the city. And then Thrive by Five was born out of that. So, good question.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilman Andrew Owen. Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, the mineral tax was going to the botanical gardens, I believe, up till this year. I mean, that's been pretty consistent. My question is related to Thrive by Five. So there was a pretty substantial allocation last year. It's now the minerals tax. Like, I just really don't like it. I know we do budgets every year. I don't like this, like, oh, we need 5 million, then it's gonna be the minerals tax, 500,000. The next year, it could be 8 million, or it could be 200,000, or do we know what the ask is going to be for the next several years for Thrive by Five?
We don't. We do have our inaugural executive director, Raylene Robinson, here to talk about any questions about Thrive by Five. Now, last year, the Mineral Severance Fund was directed, and that was part of the 5 million. So last year, the Mineral Severance Fund did go to
Yeah,
Thrive by
no,
Five.
I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is, again, last year, I was okay with not having an answer to that question because it was kind of like, this is the kickoff year. I don't know why we don't have an answer to that question yet.
Well, Thrive by Five has been working diligently to raise philanthropic funds, and obviously, eventually, there'll be probably dedicated public funding at some level, but they're right here to answer any questions that you have about that. And I've been sending the reports about how much they've raised since, so yeah.
So how much have they raised?
They've raised, 1.6 million.
In the past year?
Correct.
Okay. Let me rephrase this, and I don't think it requires the director of Thrive by Five to come up here.
Yeah.
Whoever can do this, whether it's your department or Thrive by Five, even philanthropic efforts begin with assumptions, right? Ideas like, hey, here's the goal of private fundraising versus public. Here's some scenarios, best case, middle case, worst case scenario, and then what that would mean for what we would have to be a part of in those scenarios. I think we need that information sooner rather than later. So yeah, really, that's my ask. It's preferably before we take a vote on this budget, but certainly before next year. We need that answer because it's, I'm okay with, if there's something that's strategically aligned with something that this body has deemed to be important, that it becomes an annual expenditure, but not knowing what that expenditure will be each year. And we ask this of other departments, by the way, think paving, think all these stuff. We say, look, what's the 10-year plan? What's the 5-year plan? So if we could get that, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Parker.
Yes, thank you. A couple of questions, sort of along the same line. There wasn't a lot of information provided, but what was there? It seemed like, I thought that Thrive by Five was mostly about early childhood learning, but it seemed like there was a very large focus on child care, so early child care. So with that being said, what are you working on? And you didn't have any outcomes listed, which is a big deal for me. And can you tell us what you've accomplished so far?
Well, again, it's not, it's a separate 501c3, so I sit on the board as the mayor's designee, but it's a separate 501c3. The past year, they have worked on forming a board and creating and hiring and recruiting an executive director. And really the focus, and fundraising $1.6 million. And the focus right now is building up the workforce of early educators. So that you can say childcare, you can say early learning, you can say childhood educators, but that's been the focus, and that's going to be, we're going to have a pilot program, they are going to have a pilot program in the fall, focusing on quality, improving the quality of existing childcare centers and early learning. We kind of use them interchangeably, early learning and childcare centers.
Have you spent the 5 million yet? And if so, what have you spent it on?
Why don't you jump in here? Yeah, because it's not me. Do you want to go up there to this chair? Yeah. This is Raylene Robinson. She's the Executive Director of Thrive by Five.
Hi, thank you. We have not spent the $5 million yet. We did, it is to note that we did receive the check for the $5 million in December. So since December, we have obviously hired myself. I came on board on February 10th. We have engaged in strategic planning and are looking to launch a pilot in the fall. There are no outcomes yet because basically the benchmark was to hire an executive director and then get the program started running. So we are going to be rolling out something very concrete, very rooted in KPIs in the fall. And we will be happy to bring that back to you all and share what those plans are as they come about.
Do you have any anticipated time frame of when you will actually be on the ground with programs running?
By the fall,
Okay.
yes. Our launch date is anticipated to be October 1.
Okay.
Okay?
And your necklace is
Oh,
fabulous.
thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Reno Weber.
Thank you so much. So you spoke about several of the strategic initiatives aligned with the mayor's priorities, the early childhood being one of them. I think, can you speak a little bit to the role that you are playing in coordinating the philanthropic efforts of the city and how, I mean, I think that this is one of the departments or groups that has a very clear return on investment.
Sure.
And I'd love to just know how you're thinking about, okay, great, based on the investments that the budget makes in your office, how are you thinking about the returns that we as a city are getting on that, or what other funding streams you're able to leverage?
Well, we are talking to, and we already have raised from local foundations, and we're continuing that process. And then from the city perspective, partnering with Thrive by Five to get national foundations to invest a significant sum to launch a robust pilot program here in Louisville, Kentucky. And a lot of different cities have gone that route to prove that it's sort of a proof of concept to raise national foundation money for initiatives like this.
Given that, and I think one of the things that I would love for us to consider in this next budget is, okay, great, these are investments that are very clearly bringing these returns to us as a city. Are we funding this enough? Right? Are you adequately staffed to be really going after national foundation money? Are you adequately staffed to be scaling even locally that coordination pieces? So for this year, one of the things I would love to see is going into next year, we were able to do X number of millions of dollars based on our relative, I mean, you guys are slimly staffed.
Yes.
It would be great to see, okay, great, what could we do if we invested more in this?
Yep.
Particularly, I think, also with the focus on workforce, that is clearly one of the priorities. The barriers are, we hear very clearly, childcare being one, transportation being another. What would it look like to have you all really be able to look at how do we leverage small city investments to get outsized returns? So not for this year, but for
Yep,
next year's
for next
budget.
year, yep.
Would love for you all to come back with
Yep.
that.
Great.
Thank you. We've been joined in chambers by Councilman Joseph and by Councilwoman Hawkins. Councilman Lindinger.
Thank you, Chair. So early childhood education and care for families is a really important working class issue, and I really support the Thrive by Five, that, I really want this to be successful, but I'm really concerned about the federal environment with early childhood education and childcare. We've seen almost $1 billion in, funding held up so far through the current fiscal year from the federal government, and there's anticipation that we're going to see probably a 10% drop at a minimum through budgeting on the number of children served in Head Start. That's going to probably have a disproportionate impact in our area. How is this going to impact our ability to implement Thrive by Five and in order to meet the community need?
Well, it's great that Thrive by Five is here because they're working outside of the Head Start funding, right? So they're working with existing childcare centers that don't get Head Start funding and working to improve the quality and build up the workforce. So.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is that would anticipate, a much greater burden
Need.
on programs like Thrive by Five, especially since we're looking at, Thrive by Five is going to be means tested to a degree. More kids are going to fall into the bucket of what Thrive by Five had initially, budgeted, for serving.
Yeah.
Councilman, yes,
Yeah,
this
it's a
is a
good point.
very real problem. And it is something that, as I'm out in the community visiting our local early learning facilities, that is on their mind. It is a very fragile ecosystem right now. So the timing for this work is really, really important. But I think it's top of everyone's mind. If we lose the Head Start portion of our community work, how are we as a community going to step up? And so I feel like some of the things that we're working on is in regards to workforce and what does a fully supported sector look like will be really timely as we move through. I mean, we're going to be having several budget cycles that are going to be a bit unknown for a while. So the work is timely. I wish I could sit here and tell you that we could serve all the children in Metro Louisville for $5 million. We can't. I hope that that's something that you all as a council will continue to keep an eye on and think about the implications as they come about. But I do think that we are on the right track of Thrive and listening to what the providers are saying to us as we're in the sites and implementing those ideas. They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones who know best how to create a system that's best for the children. So, that's going to take some building if Head Start goes away, but let's certainly hope that that is not the case.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here today.
Yes.
So I came in a little late, and apologize for that. It was a question that was asked about as far as the funding, right? You said you all just got some of the funding?
Yes,
That
we
was
received the
given?
check.
So you've not really been able to, you just hired somebody, so the process really just got started?
Yes.
So, right, okay.
Yes.
So that answers one. So my next question is, under this department, how many programs is under this department? I know we got Strive by Five, and which will lead to my next question, because I'm trying to keep it as close to the budget as possible.
I think that's a question about the Office of Strategic Initiatives.
Yes, how many departments are under, I know we got Strive by Five, right?
Well, Thrive by Five is a separate 501c3 that came out of the Office of Strategic Initiatives, correct?
Okay, so I guess my next question is, what are the rest of these departments doing? And how is this 5 million going towards those departments? I'm just,
When you say departments,
so Strive by Five is the only department under this, under Office for Strategic Initiatives.
well, it's not a department, it's a separate 501c3, yeah.
So,
It's a separate
right, so the
nonprofit. Yes,
501c3,
yeah.
sorry. So how many other 501c3s is under this department?
This was created out of our department, and that's it.
So it's just one?
That's it, yes.
Right?
That's
Okay.
it.
And we do not report to the Office of Strategic Initiatives. We have an independent board of directors. We're very happy to have Mariana on our board as the designee from the mayor's office. And so our work is very collaborative with the mayor's office, been very collaborative with Metro Council, which we greatly appreciate. But we are a separate 501c3, and the idea that, we're going to be working with some of our early learning sector that is small business, some of it is not-for-profit, and we'll be able to navigate those waters as a 501c3.
Okay, and where's y'all's office located?
Well, I am very fortunate to have the Lift a Life Foundation, who has given me a place to land until we find an office. But we're currently looking for some office space, and we'll be looking to hire some additional people in the next few months. I'm the only staff member right now, but Ashley Novak Butler at the Lift a Life Foundation has been super gracious to help me out with that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Again, please cause the record reflect. We've been joined virtually by Councilwoman Parrish Wright and in chambers by Councilman Batchon. Councilman Winkler, you have the floor.
Thank you, and really stay there, because I think this is going to go towards you. I want to kind of piggyback off Councilman Piagentini's earlier questions and see if my memory is correct from what was presented last year. If I remember correctly, sort of the multi-year plan for Thrive by 5 is get funding last year, hire staff, start up. Right? The initial pilot project really focuses on hiring, shoring up the labor pool for early childhood. Sort of the next phase is creating a pilot program, like an actual childcare pilot program. But the long-term plan, we really have to have state money to sustain early childhood in terms of, right? There's not a belief that in the Metro budget that we would be the provider of 3 to 5 childcare permanently. That really is ultimately going to be an ask of the state. Is that correct?
Yes, that is what we would ultimately like to get to. And we do know that for the current administration, that early learning is something that they're very interested in looking at and working on. And so, yes, we'll be looking for help from all different levels.
Thank you. Just a couple real quick, I think, questions. I'm looking at personnel numbers in terms of expense. The Metro-wide personnel control report suggests $367,525 versus what you guys supplied, which is $325,200. Where's the gap in there?
Could you repeat those numbers again, please?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Metro-wide personnel control report for the combined 3 positions. The expenditure should be $367,525.45. That's our report versus $325,200, which is the personnel expenditures for this department.
You're looking at just like the salary
Looking at personnel
numbers
for.
on the
yes.
PCR report
Yes.
and then extrapolating what the,
Well, personnel for on the Metro Personnel Control Report, the salaries assigned to this department, and then I'm looking what this department says, and they're different.
so the PCR report would include Ms. French, but she's actually ARP funded. So the general fund portion.
Thank you. That actually leads me into my second question, which is an ARP question. It's hard to tell, and I know, we've been dealing with ARP funding for a while, but it's hard to tell how much of what we're dealing with in this agency, others as well, but in this agency for sure, how much of this is ARP money versus how much of this is like ours. You did not include any ARP funding in 23, 24, 25 budgets, which distorts kind of what's being spent. How much of the $2.9 million being spent in FY26 in this year is anticipated to be ARP money? Is the 2.6 million, or 2.9, I'm sorry, is the 2.9 million in 26, is that all general fund money? Or are we using ARP money there?
Are you looking at the general fund detail page or the Are you looking in one of the budget documents?
So LAT 0086 had ARP of from.
Okay, you're
April,
looking
May.
at a LAT report.
Uh-huh.
I don't have that in front of me, so we can get back to you on those numbers.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm
Sorry, I
trying
just
to dig
wasn't
the
sure
year.
what
I'm trying
report
to
you were-
figure out where the ARP money is and isn't. And
Sure.
this says 2.9 million. I can't tell if any of that's ARP money or if it's where it's coming from.
Sure.
Great, thanks. So if you'll just let me know. Councilman Piagentini.
Just want to clarify, because I have zero disagreement with everything the vice chair said about what our understanding was. I just want to be clear, I'm just asking, then, okay, given all that, what do we think this may cost over the next couple of years? Like what, and again, because I mean, that, I get what you're saying about you're not assuming that the city would be the primary funder. I just have no idea what that means from just a ballparking. Does that mean 500 a year? Does that mean 50 million a year, right? And obviously it's somewhere in between, right? So, but yeah, so that's really all I'm asking for. I think I totally get what the direction is and appreciate that. And just want to make sure we know what the scope could look like, right? And give us some visibility into that. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilwoman Parrish-Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like my colleagues covered some of my questions. I do want to say that to keep it around budget, I was interested in the projection of what these costs will be. But also last year, I had some issues with a lot of this because I was worried about there's many child care development centers that are struggling. And I want to say that I appreciate you all taking that follow-up meeting, coming in, explaining it to me and breaking it down. And I have a better understanding. My other questions are more about the inclusion and other stuff that I want to have a follow-up meeting with you about, just to make sure, as we talked about, the other places are getting the support that they need. And I really like what you laid out at that point. But yeah, the overall cost, and I would love a follow-up meeting to talk about some of that other, the inclusion.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
100%.
I neglected to mention that Jeff Hudson has an excused absence, so I'd point that out right now for the clerks to take note. And while we're on that topic, I believe Councilman Owen wants the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Ghosting Councilman Hudson. It may be here, the pilot program that we're talking about, how big of a program are we expecting that to be? As we're trying to scale, obviously, we're going to try to do the pilot.
Yeah. So we don't have all of it finalized yet, but I can tell you what we're thinking.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about this in different parts. So one is, how do we recruit workforce, get them trained adequately, and find the individuals that we need? And what we've been spending a great deal of our time on is exploring partnerships for funds that are already existing. So one example is, we have been talking to the Urban League about, is there a way that the Senior Jobs Reentry Program can be a part of our early learning initiatives and pilot site, right? That's federal funding. There is a match that would be required for some of the sites, but we are exploring how we can use other resources so that we are good stewards of the $5 million that you all invested into this program. And so we hope to have somewhere between 10 and 20 sites. I know that that's very vague, but we're still working on the numbers of what that means. We're looking at ways of how do we reduce barriers for individuals who want to continue and grow their education in the early learning field. We know that sometimes having a computer is a barrier, then maybe they need transportation, so we're exploring all of those areas. So there is going to be a pilot part that is going to be directly with centers, but we're also looking at some sector-wide initiatives so we can also lift the broader sector up.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, as we try to plan out, it's clear that we're very much in the strategic phase, the strategic planning phase, and I get that. And so, like we have said, the sooner we have better ideas of what those parameters look like, the better.
Absolutely.
Great.
We will circle back around with you all as soon as we have something tangible and voted on and kind of firmed up. But we have lots of great ideas flowing through, not only our board, but our advisory council, from the providers themselves. And so trying to figure out which part we can take and implement in some way to have a really nice impact in the communities is where we're at.
Right, I understand that. Great, thank you very much.
Yep.
I'm not sure how to pose this next question. I'm half tempted to quote a colleague of mine and say, I've one question in 3 parts. But, so here's where I want to start. I want to start with, 2 years ago when we first started talking about this, and you guys came in last year and said, this is who we are, this is what we're going to be. I would like to start there, like, what was the original intent? Like, what was the original plan? Again, a lot of my colleagues are relatively new, and so just that alone, that baseline understanding, I think, would make a difference. And then at the same time you're answering that, or as you answer that question, if you could, go ahead and make a distinction between what you were planning on doing and what was already being done. Because the idea, you weren't trying to recreate the wheel, right? I mean, the idea was you were creating something different. And I think to Councilman Lindinger's point, there was no intent here that we would overlap or step on what was happening either through JCPS or through the Head Start program. These were very different things.
Correct.
So that's where I'd like to start first is, if you could, just a little bit of like, this was your past tense, was your vision. I think I'd like for you to speak at least a little bit to the current landscape.
Yeah.
And then I think as you answer Councilman Owen's question, you're going to answer my next one, right?
Yeah.
Because the landscape has changed considerably.
Yeah.
And the reason you keep hearing so much question about what's this going to cost, when we originally talked about this, there was a sense there'd be this philanthropy and all of these things would happen, and we would see there would not be a prolonged forever expense to Metro government. If the plan's starting to shift, if we're looking at a different landscape, and you guys are thinking about being something different next year than you were thinking about being last year, that radically changes the revenue.
Yeah.
Right? It changes where you're expecting to get it. And I think there is a reticence on many of us here to think that at the local level, through a program that's, run by a nonprofit, that somehow we're going to be able to fill those kind of gaps.
Absolutely.
The expenses there are well beyond anything that we have heretofore contemplated. And if that's what we need to be talking about, I think there are people who want to get that conversation started.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So I don't know that our vision has changed. We have 3 main areas that we're focusing on: workforce, our facilities, and community engagement. And what we know is that the workforce, when we start to invest in workforce, when we start to look at what the workforce issue is as a true workforce issue, we do know that that is going to have implications, positive implications for the JCPS, for the Greater Louisville Head Start, for OVAC, because we're building up the sector. And so that part stands. But this is a big issue for many communities across the country, and I have spent some time talking to the Denvers and the Cincinnatis and the Daytons about how did they get to that consistent funding source. Now, a lot of those cities have different tax structures than we have here in Kentucky, but that is still ultimately our goal. That is still where we want to get. We do know that in Denver, they've been doing this work for 22 years. They have an amazing program that is deeply rooted in data, and they've seen the changes in their community. And so, yes, that is still what we are working towards. With just being on the job for about 3 months, I have chosen to spend a lot of my time in each of your districts, talking to parents, talking to the providers, because we want, again, the $5 million investment to be used wisely. We want to be able to show impact, but we also want it to be meaningful change for our families. And so we're at the point now where our discussions are shifting about, okay, this is the data, this is all of the research that has been done, and how do we implement this so that we have the data we need here at the local level to go for whatever type of long-term funding there is. If it's a ballot initiative, whatever that looks like. We have made no decisions as of yet what that will look like, but we have explored what the options are. Is that helpful?
Very much, thank
Okay.
you. I think what I just heard, and my colleagues, I hope, heard the same thing, your original intent hasn't changed.
Our original
And
intent
regardless of what
hasn't
happens at the federal level, or whoever else provides or stops providing or changes what they're doing,
We are moving
it
forward.
doesn't change your focus.
Right.
Great, thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, that concludes this hearing. I know we're a bit early in our conclusion. Hope that's okay with you guys. So we'll move immediately into Parks. I believe the folks from Parks are already here. So since I'll give Parks just a moment, but we've only been in here 20 minutes. All right, 5 minutes, but I'm setting my alarm. That, folks, is my alarm. Welcome back. I'm Councilman Kevin Kramer, Chair of the Budget Committee. I'm joined by my Vice Chair, Councilman Winkler. All the folks that were in the room previously are either in the room or on their way back in the room. Councilwoman Woolridge is joining us in person instead of virtually, and Councilman Hudson still has that excused absence. As anyone else comes in, oh, Councilman Hudson is here.
Hudson, right on.
Speaking of, Councilman Hudson is in the room. I want to go ahead and get started. The second hearing is Parks and Recreations. I'd like to welcome their new director, Michelle King, to the chambers. As a reminder, departments will not make opening comments, and we will begin immediately with council questions. Parks and Recreation proposed a $41.1 million operating budget and a $7 million capital budget. Welcome, Director King. Let me start out with a question about the new Park Ranger program. The current year budget contains $300,000 for this new program. How much is proposed for the FY26 program? I understand the first park ranger employee was just hired in April of '25. How many rangers will be hired, and what is their function?
In FY26, we plan to continue the personnel that we are hiring with the FY25 budget, so that will include the chief park ranger, which is already on board, as well as 2 part-time park rangers that we are actively working to get posted and hired right now. So we don't have additional personnel planned for FY26. We think that we can get it off the ground and start showing results as we build out the program in the coming year.
Great, thank you. Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We got a list here that I think was sent over from the department. It's a breakdown, make sure I get it right, because it's a multi-page list. Exhibit B, previously funded capital projects, and then there's parentheses, council-funded projects are not included. And it breaks them down in 4 or 5 areas here: budget, encumbrance, actual year-to-date, actual whatever LTD is, and then what's remaining. And when I go to the end of this multi-page chart, we have $31,671,387 not spent and not encumbered. That's a lot of money that we haven't done anything with, and that excludes anything in this year's budget. Can you talk about, I mean, there's, in here, there's also something that says we have about 55 million in deferred maintenance issues with parks and all this stuff. Well, we got 31 million of I'm rounding to 32 million of projects that we haven't executed on, might solve some of those issues. Can you talk about why we have so much out there?
I can speak broadly to that. As you point out, this is a very long list, so there's a lot of different projects.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
Each project has a story, typically. Some of those may have remainders where a project is partly completed but waiting for some other phase in the project, and those funds just wait for whether it's additional funding or additional design concepts or permitting needs. Some of them may be that we don't have enough funds to start the project at that point, and so they sit there as well. Some of them are underway. I do think that there are some that, as we go through this list, that will come off the list because they've been substantially completed, and those funds can then be released. If there are any specific projects that you have questions about, we would definitely be happy to look into that specific situation.
No, I mean, I want to keep it more broad. I mean, I see a couple things when I look through this, right? There are 1 or 2 big things that jump out. Like, for example, the Shawnee Nature Center, $7 million. Nothing's encumbered, nothing's done. It's just sitting there, right? But if I go back to the beginning, I mean, we have stuff in here, for example, I just saw it, the fiscal year 18 Louisville Loop grant match, $190,000. Not a dollar's been encumbered on it. So, I mean, my point in here is 2 things. Number one, I'm not convinced, and this is going to be my sort of theme related to the budget, because I'm going to talk about a quote from the Louisville, the Parks for All report. we want to do all these fun, nice things with our parks, and we're not even executing the stuff that we've budgeted here. So make me feel a little better that, number one, we can execute the projects we've budgeted for, and number two, we will have a process that you're talking about where we're going to go through this and either, clean up stuff where there's balances and reallocate it to other, excuse me, deferred maintenance needs, which I think you would get a lot of bipartisan support on. Or, if a project is that old and hasn't been encumbered, just kill it and move the money someplace else. So can you talk about that process and your ability to execute on all these capital projects?
On the second point first, their ability to execute the capital projects, that has been encumbered or burdened some by, over the past year or two, our difficulty in filling all of our project manager positions, and I know we've been reporting to council about our progress on that. I'm very happy to report that we filled one of those vacant positions this past year with a very successful candidate who's been helping us move a lot of projects along. We have the other vacancy that we've been interviewing for in the past couple of weeks. So we are actively seeking to fill those positions because that is a big piece of being able to move along the capital projects. There's only so many that any project manager can work on at one time. As to the first part of your question, that process, we will certainly be working with OMB to review this list. That hasn't happened since I've been in this seat, and I think it's due for that at this point, and this is a good point in time to do that. Some of the projects that you see on here, you mentioned Louisville Loop projects, and I know that there are several on this list. Those are projects that are actually being completed in Public Works. They are the entity now responsible for building of the loop, and a lot of those projects are using federal dollars as well, and they take just a long time to get through the process, years to any one time. So that is one specific, but I definitely look forward to going through and seeing what we can consolidate, move, and get done.
Thank you. I just have a quick second question, and maybe just more of an ask than a question. I see that one of the questions was details of any changes to fee schedules, impact on revenue, reason for change. The Creason Tennis Center reservation fees will be collected by the department, and you break down that and all that. Can you give us, send us the last several years of the sort of P&L of the Creason Tennis Center? So revenue and expense?
I will provide what we have the last several years that it was operated under an agreement with private tennis professional, and I don't know what reporting requirements we had. We're starting fresh with a new license agreement this year, and we will be requiring those.
Yeah, we do something similar with golf, right? We have independent contracts with them, but they report to us partially because we want to make sure there's no fraud on top of everything else. So, yeah, if you could send that over, that would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Lininger.
Thank you, Chair. So in, 24 and 25, there was 17.8 million appropriated for deferred maintenance, only 7.1 million spent. And you talked about, the need for filling capacity in order to, in your previous answer, in order to meet these needs. We have another 3.2 million appropriated here. If you fill those roles, and I'm rooting for you, I want those roles filled, would you be able to wipe out the 24 to 26 deferred maintenance appropriations? Would we be able to fill those this year and fulfill those projects?
I would like to phone a friend on this one. Director Jason Canuel is the one who moves along many of our capital projects, and I really value his opinion on that question.
Jason, if you'll introduce yourself for the record.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Jason Canuel, the director at Louisville Parks and Recreation. And just kind of follow up on, I guess, the staffing levels with the project managers. We've got one vacant and one long-term FMLA individual. So we're down 2. So we've got a project management office of 4 people. So I think we're in the process of getting the FMLA issue resolved, and hopefully we get that going in the next month or 2. So hopefully, once we have all the positions filled, hopefully we'll be firing on all cylinders. And to answer your question, yes, I do think we're going to catch up and take care of the backlog.
Okay. And the current year proposed, in addition?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, my next question then is, if that happens, how far are we behind on the actual deferred maintenance backlog? Not just the appropriated projects, but the actual deferred maintenance in our parks?
So the last time that we put together the list, there was about $176 million worth of deferred maintenance, and that was probably 2018, 17. Since then, I think we've had roughly 18 to $20 million allocated for deferred maintenance. But what that doesn't take into account, that 176 million doesn't take into account for inflation. So although, yes, we've been chipping away, at $3, $5, $6 million increments every year, I don't think we're really making a whole lot of headway, because the more we do, the more we take care of, it's just the exact opposite is happening on the other side. The more is degrading. So
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
No, it absolutely does. So in your opinion, we are possibly at best and if we have a magic wand this year on fulfilling staff roles, at best treading water against a growing, hole in deferred maintenance in parks that cannot possibly be filled under the current funding.
I would say treading water is a good
Okay.
analysis.
How far behind are we in the funding for deferred maintenance in Parks for All, according to the plan through the past fiscal years, including this year, compared to this year budget to what it should be under Parks for All?
I
I don't have that
number.
analysis, but we'll take a look at it.
Yeah,
and get back
I would
to you.
really like to know,
Yeah.
because that was something that passed this chamber 26-0 and was endorsed by the mayor. So that's a promise that Louisville has made to our park system, and I am extremely concerned about this deferred maintenance problem that is, really degrading quality of life in the city and our access to parks. This is a huge problem, and I really question whether we are adequately funding parks even with this budget. Thank you.
Councilwoman Rui.
Thank you very much. So I agree, we are woefully underfunded. We know that. I appreciate everything you do to try and keep plowing forward with the funds that you have. So my question is, I was looking at all the projects that have been completed and what was budgeted for them and what they actually cost. And most of them came in under budget, but there's a few of them that came in over budget, and they were like massively over budget. What do the numbers come out with at the end? So do we wind up with more money left over? Do all those projects wind up costing more in toto than was originally laid out for it?
Are you referring to the deferred maintenance numbers?
Yes.
Jason Canuel again.
Again, Jason Canuel. Do I need to introduce every single time? Jason Canuel, Director of Louisville Parks and Recreation. So we knew going into the deferred maintenance list that, we were coming up with proposals and numbers for projects that don't have plans done, aren't permitted, and we are using our best educated guess on how much that they were to cost. And you are correct, some are under budget, some are over budget. And I think in the end, we're hoping that the trend is that it's going to kind of come out as a wash. Some are over, some are under, but the number of projects that are listed on there, the last time that we really looked at it really closely was probably 4 months ago, that we believe that what information that we have today on the projects that aren't done, that the amount of funding that is there, they're all going to be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Batchon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions. My first one is, I see on this chart here that park operations, turf, and golf is $12,314,000. Is that coming out of the operating budget, or is that coming out of the golf enterprise budget?
Can you let me know where you're looking at for that
I'm
specific?
looking at a chart that says programs operating cost.
Okay.
It's on the questions where it says administration, cemeteries, engineering, skilled trades, recs and aquatics, parks operations, historic homes, amphitheater, Jefferson Memorial Forest, urban forestry. Page 6, I guess you would say.
Thank you. That is a mix in that response, I believe, but all the golf course budget comes out of that golf course cost center. So each of those cost centers identified there, and I'm using my right O&B terminology with cost centers. Those programs each have their own spot in the budget for our golf courses. So every one of those that's a golf course comes out of that. Now Extreme Park is listed there, that wouldn't come out of golf. Add to that, Jason.
Yep, and just to add to that number does include the revenue and expenses. So that $12 million number you see does take into account the revenue that's brought in, as well as the expenses for the golf courses.
So the revenue coming in is coming also out with the expenses, and this is the leftover difference for the operating costs?
So there's no general funds that are put into golf. It's the enterprise fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
My next question is on deferred maintenance and I guess deferred maintenance / procurement, right? How many bids are we receiving for the RFPs to get things done? And are we looking at any alternative ways to work on some type of blanket purchase agreements with smaller contractors to get some of these smaller jobs done, like the Shawnee Golf Community Room, HVAC replacement, rather than using a massive contractor that would do a building like this, using a smaller one that could probably save us half the money. Are we looking at those options in your plan?
We are. We're looking at all options. For example, Metro's got the small procurement policies. Anything less than $5,000 we can purchase things and services without necessarily a contract. Metro has also have annual contracts that are bid out and awarded on a yearly basis. So there's a plumbing contractor with an annual contract. There's an HVAC contractor with an annual contract. And I think the limit to that, is $150,000. So that gives us the ability to utilize those on some of the smaller projects like that. Anything over that, we typically will put plans together and put that out for bid. And that's just being a good steward of taxpayer dollars, trying to get the best price for the project. Typically, here recently, what we've been seeing on the projects that we're bidding, we're not getting but 2 or 3 bids back. And it's normally the 2 or 3 contractors here in Louisville that bid on everything. So we've tried, tennis courts is a great example. We tried to contact 2 companies in Lexington, try to get them interested in some of the tennis court projects we have here in town, and they weren't interested. So again, we're trying to come up with all ways to try to get this done, and trying to think of all the ways that we can get things done.
With, Mr. Chair, you talked about project managers and needing staffing and project managers. How many are you short?
We have 1 vacant and 1 that's out on long-term FMLA, so we're down 2.
What are the requirements to be a project manager?
I don't have the job description in front of me, but there's, I think, a bachelor's degree or better in civil, mechanical, architecture, or construction inspection-related fields.
It seems like we are, ever since I've been on council, it seems like that's been an ongoing issue. Is that something that we maybe need to tailor to get additional project managers into our system so that we can execute these projects in more of an efficient way and timely manner?
Right, so what we have found, it's not necessarily the requirements, it's the salary. The salary that we're paying right now for a project manager, we really can't compete with what they would be making on the private side right now. And I think there's been 1 or 2 different increases. The compensation study helped us out quite a bit on trying to raise that salary up. It raised it up, but we're still not in the same ballpark as what the private industry is paying.
Where do you need to be at for a project manager?
High 90s.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're joined online by Councilwoman Bast, Councilman Winkler.
Thank you. I'd like to maybe make a sort of question/point, and Deputy Mayor George, this relates a little bit to the comment I made yesterday about paving in parks and libraries, sidewalks, and those sorts of things. I wonder if the administration, and maybe this, Mr. Chair, might be language that we add in the budget, has the administration ever looked at sort of shared core services? So for example, Public Works mows medians, Parks mows parks. What if you just had a mowing department? You know, we have a paving group in Public Works, we have a paving group in Parks. What if somebody just centrally has that responsibility? I'm curious if I could just get a nod if that has been looked at, and if not, is that something that we might look at in the future? And if there's any value in that. And similarly, I think to Councilman Batchan's question, you know, are the skills for we have the same shortage of project managers across multiple departments. Again, is there a common skill set there that whether I'm managing a paving project or a parks deferred maintenance project, the skill set is the same? And so, you know, is there an opportunity perhaps to create a project management department that then also creates job growth for people because you'd have multiple levels of supervision? You know, that sort of helps augment some of your salary concerns because then it provides growth opportunities for people. So just something to throw out there. Again, if you've thought about it, great, tell me, we've looked into it. If not, that might be something worth exploring, so. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, if you'll introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you. Nicole George, Deputy Mayor, Public Health, Public Services. The point that was raised yesterday during the Public Works Committee was certainly well taken, one we have thought about and had conversations from last night to today, and we are committed to looking at some opportunities to be able to explore ways to leverage services across the enterprise. So more to come on that. We'll be engaging you, but that is one of the benefits of this process in the budget hearing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. And so again, I would just say if we could look broader than just paving, and I think we'll commit to that. The second question I had is, so one, and this is really more of a budgetary curiosity question. I know we split out deferred maintenance and I think immediate repairs, if I'm not mistaken, as two separate capital line items. Just out of curiosity, why do we split those out? Is it just because the immediate repairs are sort of like more flexible for stuff that breaks in real time, or? Because they're both, I mean, functionally, they're both deferred maintenance, right?
In a way, yes. So the general repair account is used for things that are immediately broken. So a restroom gets vandalized, you know, we'll use general repair dollars to fix the restroom and the doors. The deferred maintenance is more of a plan that we come into every year saying, here's our plan, what we're going to lay out, what we're going to try to accomplish this year. Okay. The general repair is the immediate need of repairing things.
Okay, so stay there, Jason, because I think you're going to answer the next question too, which is there's $3.2 million of proposed deferred maintenance in the budget. I know we got a detailed of deferred maintenance needs as of March 31st that totals $22 million. Should we consider that list in order? Like, are those prioritized in order, or is there no real, you know, are they alphabetized or, you know, by category? I think they're by category.
They're more categorical, okay. But how we come up with that list, that $22 million list, those are more things that we determine are more life safety issues. So we put a higher priority on that $22 million. If there's only $3.2 million allocated for deferred maintenance, then we've got to go to that list and try to pick out the 3.2 that are on the life safety issues. So it's all life safety issues right now.
So I'd like to piggyback off Councilman Lineger's question. So a couple years ago, we passed the Parks for All plan. That set out a series of priorities for Metro government as it relates to our parks infrastructure. So I've got a two-part question. One, is this deferred maintenance plan consistent with what was passed in Parks for All? And two, when we think about the budget holistically, including the things that are included in the capital budget for parks, including the Olmsted match, how does that align to the strategy of Parks for All?
I think the first part of your question is yes, it is consistent with the Parks for All plan in that we continue to receive funding at whatever level per year. So the fact that you all are agreeing to continue to give us deferred maintenance money, that is agreeing with the Parks for All plan. The level at which it's funded, I don't think is meeting what the Parks for All plan said.
Yeah, but I think the Parks for All plan specifically laid out tiers of deferred maintenance. And I guess my question is, does this deferred maintenance list align with those tiers?
I'll have to go back and read the plan. I'm not sure.
Okay. And my last question, so I know we've got money for some parks improvements here. My question is about Alberta Jones Park. What is the Parks Department's plan for, well, let me ask it this way. Does the Parks Department believe that Metro Louisville has any responsibility in the future development of Alberta Jones Park, or is that exclusively on the Parks Foundation to fund and develop?
It's not necessarily exclusive. I mean, we have a hand in the actual design. You know, I think we work with Brooke a lot on, with Phase 1 on what was in the park, how it was developed, and how it's going to be maintained in the future. And Phase 2, we've taken that same responsibility working with them. So we're working hand in hand with them on that project, as well as Ballard Park, which is another one, and GG Moore, which is coming up, and Sylvania coming up after that. So
Councilman Hudson.
Thank you, Chair. I typically like to fly at a higher altitude than this and avoid cherry picking. It's on. Is that better? Sorry about that. Thank you. There are two items in the deferred maintenance list that I would appreciate some enlightenment on. But we'll just focus on one, Sun Valley restroom replacement. Can you explain to me why a bathroom costs $765,000?
Jason up on that one, too. He's built more bathrooms than anyone, I think, in this building.
So when we are designing a public facility, it's designed to be the most indestructible materials that we can possibly get, because they're going to get abused, they're going to get vandalized, they're going to get graffitied. So what we have gone with, the design at Sun Valley, is a precast basic box. So as far as the cost goes, I mean, we publicly bid that project out. And the bids that we got back, that one, I think in particular, that was the low bid. So why it costs that much, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know what the opinion is of general contractors here in Louisville or in the region. I don't know why it doesn't get more attention. But I agree with you. It does seem high. But Councilman Piagentini's restroom, it doesn't cost that much. It was a little bit lower because it was a little bit smaller.
Got your own restroom right there.
Well, which park was that?
That was in Sun Valley.
Was
There's
there an
another
existing
one.
bathroom there that was being replaced?
There was.
Yeah,
So those two restrooms,
Long
Sun Valley
Run,
and
Long Run was 500,000.
Yeah, those were both
Yeah.
built in 1974. So we're just now replacing them, 50 years later.
My guess is that it's the cost of doing business with the city of Louisville. And we're paying the paying tax on how hard it is to work with us. But if it's not that, then let's dig into it and find out what it is. If it is that, let's find out where those pain points are.
And I'm not
fix
sure
those
if that's the
things.
case. So, I mean, when we put them out for bid, the bids that we're getting back, they're all relatively close. So whether it's the labor, the cost of labor here in Louisville, the cost of materials here in Louisville, I don't know. But if they're all that similar, it doesn't seem like there's going to be one oddball to lowball bid it in order to get it. So I'm not real sure how to answer that.
My point being, if whatever price comes back at a low bid, that we not just accept it.
We don't. We've canceled bids in.
Yeah, but we didn't cancel this one.
No.
And that's an extreme one. I would line up porta potties before I'd pay almost $1 million for a 500 square foot bathroom.
That one is, it's men's restroom, women's restroom, concession stand, and a storage room, and an overhang. So it's not just the smaller restroom. There's a little bit more to it. But again, to your point, it probably doesn't all add up.
Far cry from $700,000 worth of building there. Let's find out where the pain point is and address it, and I'm willing to help.
I'm not sure if purchasing or O&B has been here, but maybe that's a good discussion to have with Joel Gavel. I'd love to take part in it.
Yep.
And really, if it's a task force that we can form to really dig into that, I'd be happy to join.
Me too. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilwoman Parrish Wright?
Okay, I was trying to get off mute. I don't know what happened. Thank you. Some of my questions were covered. I just trying to keep it around budget. The most visible thing we can see as we are the power of the purse is with our parks. And I know you understand that, and I see the passion and the work that's happening. And I definitely appreciate the ongoing work with all the renovations, and thank you for breaking those things down. I guess my question is around with the hiring, of hiring what you need, and kind of, I guess, a little bit with some of what my other colleagues have said. Has there been different approaches with maybe younger apprentice people with the unions and things like that to see about addressing the hiring shortages and getting these projects done?
We do work closely with our union team to fill those vacancies that are union positions. The project manager positions are not union positions. We have worked to try to get those postings out more widely. I think, one of our best strategies is to try to get those into some university career centers so that we can get maybe some recent graduates, that kind of strategy. So those are things that we are all aiming to do. We're also trying to work with our HR department to get those postings up and turned around quickly. I know that they're working on their hiring timeline as well. So if we don't have candidates from one posting, we repost as quickly as possible and then try again to get the word out as many ways as possible. I think we'll also be working with our peer departments that have similar positions to see how we can join forces to find candidates for the positions among us as well.
Thank you. I would love to help. And then the next question around, I know it's limited on the people that take the bids. There's some smaller construction and different companies who have said that it's been hard for them to get in line. Do you all refer people to be able to be a Metro government contractor? Do you all refer them, or have other companies address that with you? What is, like, as you're recruiting for your staff shortages, I also think we have a shortage on Metro government contractors that can do some of the smaller jobs. I'm not questioning the $750,000 restroom. I have no idea what those things cost. But I do know that when we're trying to outsource some things, there's a limit on who's able to do it. Just wanted to see where you were with that.
In the purchasing process, we do have the opportunity to refer our requests for proposals to contractors that we know might do that kind of work. And we will do that front-end work as much as possible to try to find the potential bidders and present that information to O&B through that purchasing process, and so that when that RFP goes live, they get directly notified that it is there and available. Obviously, that assumes that we know about them. So I'm not sure if O&B has some additional strategies for trying to get those bids out more widely to more contractors, but that we definitely try to do that homework on the front end to find as many potential respondents as possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, please cause the record to reflect that we've been joined virtually by Councilman Reed. Councilwoman Chapel.
Thank you, and hello. I was just at your headquarters today, and so long time no see. And I just want to give a shout out. You have a wonderful organizational chart. I'll give you an A+. I know that I have not been doing that this year, colleagues, but I assure you I've been doing it in the background, and I will be issuing those grades. I had a really great employee drop a rubric, which I felt remiss not sending to you prior to budget hearings, but it'll at least help understand my scoring. So I just want to say A+. So I do want to mention that it looks like last year's approved budget, we funded $13,681,675,000 worth of capital projects in our park. In this year's in this year's budget, there's only $7 million for capital projects within our parks, which is nearly a 50%, 50% deduction in that cost. And so it seems odd that we have a Parks for All plan and we are really invested in our public spaces, but it doesn't seem like we're putting our money or investing in our parks. And in the fiscal year 25 budget hearings, the mayor had proposed his long-term capital investment plan. Looking at that plan and the 20 projects that are on it, only 2 of those are reflected in this budget. Should we be paying any attention or holding any accountability to the mayor's long-term proposed projects? Or should we just move forward as if that was noise in the past?
Hi, Angie Dunn, CFO. I think I do want to just sort of point out that the purpose of the long-term plan is to sort of telegraph what some of those upcoming ideas are or future projects. It doesn't necessarily mean that every project is shovel-ready or is ready to go. So one of the things we are trying to do is, and it's a transition, so it's not going to be perfect every year, it's going to continue to evolve. One of the things we are trying to do is identify, for each capital budget that we put in front of you, trying to shift to a process where the projects are shovel-ready or are closer to being ready to get kicked off the ground, so that we're not carving out money to put into a project that may not get started for another 2 years or 3 years. And so I think, without knowing the specific projects you're talking about, that is some of the, at least the intent of having a long-term plan that goes along with an annual budget. Not everything that's on that long-term plan is going to show up in your annual budget, because we're trying to look at that from a long-term perspective and then put in front of you the projects that are more readily available to get started sometime within the fiscal year that we're trying to budget for. That's sort of just a big picture idea of the long-term plan versus an annual budget that's put before you.
Sure. It's also just additionally confusing because the mayor this year introduced his preliminary 5-year capital plan, which goes from fiscal year 26 to fiscal year 30. And there's only 4 projects identified, 4 parks in that plan. So that doesn't match up. And it's extremely frustrating and difficult as a council person coming into this meeting. Pardon me. We have a Parks for All plan. We have parks that we know need investment. We have this 5-year plan that the mayor's put together. We have a slew of master plans that are outdated but have a ton of deferred maintenance. So when are we going to take the opportunity to say what is going to be our guiding light and how do we move forward in that way? And I'm really glad that you brought up funding for parks with shovel-ready plans. There are quite a few of those, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but shouldn't have been provided if you didn't want me to bring it up, but the long-term capital investment plan and those 20 projects that we have, there's some that do have plans associated with them, yet they are not funded. And some of these are plans such as Alberto Jones Phase 2 Park, also Emerson Park Phase 2. Those have plans, those have dollar amounts associated with them. So I was wondering, in the $7 million in capital projects that have been outlined in this budget, how many of those have shovel-ready plans? Because while I do love Iroquois Park, and I would love for them to have funding, there is no plan for that playground. So by all means, let's get a new playground in there, but I've never seen a plan for it. So if we have parks that have plans, why are we not funding them?
I can speak to your specific example. For example, the Iroquois Park Playground, part of the funding for that project includes a design phase. So we do sometimes have the funding for design and build all in one package, and in particular with the Olmsted Match projects, for example, that is putting the funding where it needs to be in order to marry up with their funding and get that project underway. That is part of a longer-term vision for Iroquois Park. I think that the projects within this $7 million capital budget that we have, which of course includes our general maintenance and our deferred maintenance, they do align with priorities as best we can fund with $7 million. So we do include some additional funding here for G.G. Moore Park improvements. We, of course, would do more parks and could fund more of the plans that we have in hand if we had additional funding in that. I don't know if that completely addresses your question, but I don't know that I have a complete.
I guess of those 3 Olmsted Match projects, is there an MOU detailing that they are going to be on the hook for a 1-to-1 match for that amount?
We do have their match.
And I'll get back in the queue in just 1 second, but I'm going to pivot because we're talking about Iroquois Park, and they have an annual operating cost of $6,268,300. Oddly, revenue is that exact same number. That doesn't seem plausible in my eyes, but also, given our new contract with Danny Wimmer Presents, should we be projecting that operating cost to be lower or even cash positive in the future? Because wouldn't that be the goal?
That is
So that's the revenue.
Yeah, that is, again, that's similar to the question that we had earlier. That is an enterprise fund, so that includes the revenue and expenditures. So I believe that's why that's reflected that way.
So that 6 million number is
Iroquois
both of those
Amphitheater-
things, but maybe we could get a breakdown of like how much of that is operating and how much is revenue? And last one is, where is the revenue that Parks receives from Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular reflected in the budget?
The current year, that would be in the receipts for the Iroquois Amphitheater. We have a new MOU going forward, and that will be, a portion of it will go into our general operating.
All right, I'll get back in the queue, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilwoman Hawkins.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Michelle. I just got a couple questions. Okay, so for the park rangers, we got 300,000 in the budget. How many park rangers does Parks plan to hire? And I know right now we only got one, right? So is that park ranger going around to each park, or is there like, and what is that going to look like before the year is out?
Yeah. Right now, we do have our chief park ranger, Chief James Brown, is on board. He's been with us almost a month now, so he is certainly working to develop those policies and procedures for himself and the additional 2 part-time park rangers that will be hired with the FY25 funding that was set aside, and then those will continue into FY26. We don't anticipate having funding to add additional positions in the next year. But among those 3 park rangers, there will be a patrol plan that is being developed right now, actually, and that's reflected from the data that we have gathered on where we have incidents, where we have vandalism, where the needs have been greatest amongst our 124 parks. So they'll be prioritizing those on a regular route, as well as being able to be responsive to needs as they arise in other parks as well.
Okay, great. My next question is, I also seen in the budget that Olmsted matches certain projects, right? But I'm also noticing that Olmsted is on several parks that they're not seen in. For one, Algonquin, I think maybe once a year, the only thing that they do is come in and do a dance audition, and that's it. And they do it from 9 to 10 every year. Other than that, we don't see them. Can we look into, can you give me a list, or can you get back with me on what they have done in the parks that are west of 9th Street, and if they've matched any projects in those parks? I'd like to see them a lot more visual than they have been in the past in projects, you know.
Sure, I will definitely get some updated information, especially with the programs and activity. I will point out that last year we were able to cut the ribbon on a new Chickasaw Pond restoration project, as well as a river overlook and natural play area in Chickasaw. So I know that they have been quite active there, and I can get you a more complete list for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Joseph?
Hello, thank you for being here. My question is actually from the binder that we got for the new members that discussed capital improvement allocations from Metro budget from the previous years, but would also, I would assume, go to right now. And it's this page right here that has the different green and yellow dots that are symbolic of the money and investment that is taking place around the city with parks. And my question is there any plan in place for increased spending outside of the Waterson, as it seems most of our spending historically is inside the Waterson, and we know that the population is shifting outward?
Absolutely, we're looking at parks across the entire city, and we've seen some great investments in some of our southwest parks. And we just talked about some investments at Sun Valley. Certainly Jefferson Memorial Forest is seeing a resurgence of interest in funding to go along with that. I noticed that is from the Parks for All study.
Yeah.
And the data analysis that went into that definitely weighed heavily into population density, which ended up with a lot of focus on the more population dense areas. But as you say, we have moving demographics. So one of our goals is to take a fresh look at that and see where some of the data that's less dependent on that density might point us to some of the other underinvested parks that we know are in our southwest and south ends.
What would you say if you had to say an area, and I'm not looking for a South End answer, genuinely, I'm just curious, that is the most underinvested with parks?
I don't know that I have an informed answer for you on that at this point. I do think the Parks for All study does a good job of evaluating our investments, and we do need to update that to reflect some of our recent year investments, which have been really targeted at some of those underinvested parks that were identified in the study. But I definitely would like to be able to answer that with more clarity.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilwoman Parker?
Thank you. I have two questions. One has to do with programming at YMCA, and the other one has to do about special event rentals. First one, YMCA, and sorry, I didn't write down what the budgeted amount was for YMCA, but it was for early learning readiness. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay. So my question is, we just came through or just had Office of Strategic Planning, and we were talking about Thrive by Five. So they're all about early learning readiness. I'm just wondering, are you all collaborating with them?
Absolutely. I believe that this funding that is coming through us to the Y to bring programming into our community centers, I think that was an opportunity that was brought to us by their office.
Okay, well, that's good to know that you guys are collaborating. So the other one, special event rental, the past year we spent about $6,000, and we've got $429,000 budgeted this year. Are we anticipating more events, or did we just pay out were we
So you mean as far as our receipts from special
Yeah.
events rentals?
I mean, are you anticipating more events, or?
That is a good question. I think
If
that
you
that's
don't know,
based
you
more
can-
on projections from prior years, and we certainly hope to attract more and more events in our spaces. We are focusing in the coming year on additional marketing activities, and that's one of the reasons is that we hope that we can bring in more revenue as the community makes greater use of those assets.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Marino Weber.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all of the great work that you're doing. My colleagues took most of my questions, so I will only echo that I firmly agree and believe that we are underfunding the parks system in general, along with our commitments to Parks for All, that plan. We have great planning. We got to be able to spend the money that we have allocated and continue to increase that funding. Parks are economic development. Parks are talent attraction. I do have one question about, I know that we have an MOU to match with Olmsted Parks. Do we also have an MOU with Parks Alliance to match the funding that they have raised?
We do have an MOU with Parks Alliance. It's not the same setup, but we do have an agreement with them. We work with them closely. We've started developing that more. It's a little bit, it's a newer relationship than what Olmsted Parks Conservancy has developed over the years with Parks, as Parks Alliance is newer in its current form. And I think that we're doing a great job of developing that partnership in a way that will bring additional philanthropic dollars and fundraising opportunities for investment in our parks facilities.
So I know that we've been working around Alberta Jones, which is awesome, by the way. So cool. And cool to see the community get really activated around that. Like, what would need to be true for us to be able to match our commitments with those new parks? And
Well, Alberta Jones as a new park is a bit unique in that it's being developed from scratch. So I think that the current funding need for a fully funded Phase 2 would be $2.5 million. Other park projects that we're working with Parks Alliance are redesigns of existing parks that haven't seen investment for years. So right now, we're really heavily active in the Ballard Park imagining. In fact, we did a groundbreaking on that and hope to see some changes happening in construction very soon. We have Gigi Moore next up, and we've been really enjoying working with the Parks Alliance on the community engagement, and that's something that I think is a strength that they really bring to that process. So additional funding year over year for each of those parks as we bring them forward, and we have a pipeline behind. As Director Canuel pointed out, we also have Sylvania Park that we've been working with Parks Alliance to understand needs and what some strategic investment there could bring for that community as well. So we're looking at the Parks for All study as a kind of guiding light for where we start investing time and dollars next.
Thank you. I know that you have been reactivating the board structure. Can you speak a little bit about the status of that and how that might impact your ability to raise philanthropic money directly or engage with in strategic planning?
Yeah, I believe you're referring to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We are working with the mayor's office right now to determine the future of the board. And I think that, it would be an opportunity for more public opinion or public comment opportunities to hear more about the operations of parks and recreation on a regular basis, not just when we get to come here and answer the questions that you have for us. So it's a way to bring more voices into the conversation about parks, including our park partners.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilman Owen.
Thank you, Chair. I know this is a little bit redundant, and I know that there are things that are happening within the Metro government and with the administration to deal with this. And part of the reason we're focused so much on this is we were looking at the capital costs within parks, and we're all very passionate about parks. And we were looking at the individual line items, and we were just blown away by the cost of these things. And so I think we are missing, on a couple of fronts, I think we're missing some opportunities. I think I am very much a proponent of higher education, but I hope that we're flexible in our hiring. Because if we say that we're only going to hire a bachelor degree with certain this, that, and the other, then I think we're hemming ourselves in a way that we shouldn't. And we're missing opportunities for apprenticeship programs, I think, with Youth Build and with One West and all the work that they're doing. If you brought in somebody to Parks at 20 years old and paid them 30 grand, you know, and your senior project manager is making high 90s, or that's where they could make, you know, you've got a lot of room to train somebody within your system to be a very productive project manager. Between 30,000 hiring, you just kind of shadow somebody for a number of years, and to get them to that level, I just hope we're flexible enough and we're not saying, you know, we have to have a bachelor in construction management or whatever, because of course, if I've gone to college and I've spent $100,000 to go to college, then I need to get paid $98,000 in order to pay my college loans back. So I just want to make sure that we're flexible as Metro government. And this isn't specific to parks necessarily. It's more broad than that. But then also this idea about the contracting. I think there's two things going on here. Yes, the pain points that Councilman Hudson was talking about, we're getting a premium for doing business with Metro government. We got to figure that out. But we're also paying a premium because the contractor pool is not deep enough. And Councilman Reno Weber and I met with Chan Kemper recently in the administration. I know she's focused on this exact thing, but we need, as a Metro government, to figure out how to deepen that contractor pool. Because if we spend time and effort on that, it checks off so many boxes. It's good government because we're able to deliver on projects. It drives costs down because we've got a deeper contracting pool. It promotes small business formation and therefore economic development. It helps in workforce development and youth engagement, and it can help in equity goals. And so I just want to make sure that, and I think we can do it across government. I mean, how many millions of dollars do we contract with between parks, public works, quasi-government agencies, water company, MSD, all of those organizations? If we can do things like help with payroll float for small contractors, which has got to be a big, you know, obstacle in doing big contracting jobs, and we can help with bonding capacity for smaller companies, and we can increase that contractor pool, it's a win, 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 win. So I know there's focus on that within the administration. I just want to make sure that we continue to push that conversation forward because it's advantageous in so many ways.
Thank you. So colleagues, we have 4 people left in the queue, and we've got about 20 minutes left. So if we stick with, you know, budget questions and make sure there's a question in there somewhere, and we're getting to what we can use in our figuring out what the next budget looks like, that would be helpful. So Councilwoman, and if you want to get in the queue, now is your chance, because with 4 people in 20 minutes, I think we're going to be fine. If we had too many, we're not going to all have a chance. Councilwoman Rui.
Okay, thank you very much. So they are budget questions. So the first one is regarding the LEFI grant, the Equitable Forest Initiative. So I understand that has been hit on the chopping block. Unfortunately, it's no surprise. Can you talk about how that impacts your budget?
At this point, we still retain that grant?
That's what I thought. This report says it's not there. It says, why was this grant not awarded?
All day.
So we still have that grant.
We do still
Good.
have that grant.
Thank you. I'm glad to be affirmed on that. So that makes one less question. Okay. Next one then, you talk about, because you have a lower turnover rate, you now have more money available and time, whatever, for training. And then it's brought up in our briefing here that you have a budget of $29,200 for training, and right now you've only spent $18,900. If you're spending more on training, where's the money coming from? How's it being charged?
Hi, I'm Sarah Flarsheim. I'm Executive Administrator for Parks and Recreation. A lot of our current training, because we haven't had a position dedicated to training, has been in partnership with Metro Training University, run through Metro HR. And so things that cost money like first aid CPR licenses, CDL licenses, we are working with other departments. But we actually recently, 2 weeks ago, just hired a training coordinator. So we now have a full-time position who will be building out our training program and developing that for us. So we're really excited for that.
Okay, that's very good to know. Just out of curiosity, I was told at one point when I first got in that many times Metro employees get their CDL and they go elsewhere. Are we able to hang on to our employees with CDLs now?
Yes, we've won the compensation study, helped some. We also now have an agreement that CDL position holders sign with us when we are providing their CDL training that says that they must stay with Metro for a set amount of time or reimburse Metro for the cost of their license. So that is definitely extending the amount of time that we're keeping our CDL drivers.
So what's the period of time typically?
I want to say it's 12 months, but I can check and send that agreement to you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Herndon.
Thank you, sir. One quick follow-up on the pain points that Councilman Hudson mentioned, and then I have a question of you about working with JCPS with parks. The pain points are true. Having dealt with goods and services before with Downtown Partnership, for example, last year, you put in $300,000 for new garbage cans for downtown. It took 9 months to get the RFP out, and it was 27 pages long for garbage cans, and that caused most of the people not even to respond. And to Councilman Batshaw's point, if we only get the big boys that can handle that kind of thing, then they can't do the small jobs for a fair price. And we end up asking Da Vinci to paint our kitchen, and that's why it costs so much. On the other point, do you ever work, or have you ever worked with Jefferson County Public Schools to use parts of their property for pocket park, for example, for out in the county where many schools sit on large parcels of land? Would it be possible to work with them to slice off a bit of that and provide a public pocket park for use in that neighborhood? Because out and about in the city, we have walkable parks, but as you get further out, that becomes more difficult. And then land is also expensive, but would it be possible to do that kind of thing? Not to share a playground with the public, but if there's a big swath of land that we could use for a pocket park that would be available to folks otherwise at a much lower cost of just a lease, is that possible to do?
I do know that in the past, we have had instances where JCPS property was used as a park, and park property may have gone to JCPS. I know at least the first part is true. So it is certainly something that we could explore.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lininger.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So, something that I'm really concerned about is addressing root causes of crime and violence. Particularly the biggest thing that I have heard about from my constituents is giving our kids somewhere where they can be, where that's safe, that's productive, has positive impacts in their lives. And your department really interacts with that a lot, so I've got a couple of questions on that. The first is, how much, and I apologize if this is, illiteracy on my point, but I'm having trouble finding where the breakdown is on what are we spending in this budget on youth programming in our community centers, and how does that compare to previous budgets?
It isn't always broken out the way that we would like for it to be, is it?
Yeah.
I share that sometimes. I think we'll need to get back to you with those specific details.
Okay, well, we might have an answer coming up behind you.
Yeah. I don't know, but if you have something to add, for sure.
Ben Johnson, Assistant Director over the Recreation Division. Could you repeat that question for me, please?
I'd like to know how much we're spending on youth programming in our community centers in this budget, and how does that compare to previous budgets?
Okay. Well, I will have to get back to you so I can look at those specific numbers. But one of the other things that we do quite a bit is also partner with people, so it won't necessarily be apples to apples. We have some organizations that are actually working out of and based out of community centers. We work quite a bit with JCPS. We do some things with Metro United Way and some other organizations. So what I will get is our numbers directly, but then try to also account for some of the partnering activities, because I will say we can't do everything in terms of the size of the community and some of the needs. So we make partnering with other organizations a very particular and specific strategy that we employ.
Yeah, but I would like to know what we're investing, but
No, I
thank you.
understand.
So my next questions are about pools. So my first question pertains to, in our questions that we, asked for answers from the department, we asked about aquatics master plan and what the status is on the update on where we are in the aquatics master plan, and we just received back the executive summary of the 2022 master plan, which, of course, reflected that Louisville is 89th at the time with 0.8 pools per 100,000 citizens. What is the status? Where are we on the aquatic master plan?
Councilman, if you look, there's another master plan exhibit that was sent in there. There's a detail in there about how much money we had anticipated the budget to be and how much was allocated for the two pools that are currently under construction right now.
Sure. So, there's no further action in turn, like not just shovels in the ground, building pool, but there's nothing further going on in regards to what was outlined in the previous master plan?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is about the two pools that we do have active work on. And so let me move here in the notes. We had, excuse me, there's $423,000 appropriated for 15 new positions for security at Algonquin and Camp Taylor. So are these in addition to the previous FY25? And how many would be needed for us to operate these pools at a level that goes beyond, like, I don't know what the current one is, I think it's like noon to 3 or something like that? I'm sure I'm being a little bit facetious, but it's not how long
Noon to
pools
5.
should be open.
Yeah, our pools are currently open from noon to 5. The amount requested is what would be needed in addition to what is programmed in the current year. We did take a look at the question of what it would take to have pools open from noon to 7 o'clock, and that's roughly an additional $190,000, and that would include all 4 of our outdoor pools.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilman Winkler.
I had a question about pool receipts. If I remember correctly in the budget, I think we've only budgeted like $1,200 total for pool admissions. As such a de minimis amount, is it even worth charging kids to use the pool?
You want to take that?
Well, and I may not have heard the last part of your question, I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, why are we creating a barrier for kids to use our pools? I mean, it isn't and shouldn't be a revenue generator. I know it's not particularly expensive to go to the pool, but, it is an expense and it is a barrier. And what if we eliminated the fee?
That's you. That's an operating question.
Yes. There are a lot of opinions on nominal charges for entrance into pools. One of them is that, I think the phrasing is, we don't value what we don't value. So by putting some value on that, it does convey that this is a valuable community asset that you're taking a part of. We do have some ability to have that revenue, and honestly, there's also been the question of should it be more to have entry to that pool compared to other assets. So you ask a great question. I think that there is some budget question in there, but there's also some philosophy in there as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, and I don't want us to make an inadvertently make a mistake by eliminating a nominal fee and then, having, sending a message that then creates negative behavior. I completely understand sort of the human nature element of things. I wonder, is there an opportunity to combine pool admission with something like our Culture Pass program, which again is a free program, but does add some element of ownership into the process, even though it's still free, you do have to take a proactive step. So I just maybe throw that out, food for thought.
Assistant Director Johnson?
Yes, Ben Johnson. Aquatics also falls under me. And operationally, what Executive Director King was in the direction she was headed is correct. A lot of times, you don't value what you don't value. So that's, a little bit of minimal skin in the game. We also have to be careful about capacity. And also, we have been looking into, and we can get you numbers when we finish, but we are nowhere near market in terms of charging for aquatic access. If that's a concern, then it would be a reverse of one of the other studies where we would be at the top of the chart in terms of the value, or at least perceived value.
Thank you. Councilman Batchelor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to keep this short. It's a couple questions into one, if that's okay. But, and I think this might be for Michelle and Jason. Do we have a cost? Do we know what the cost is needed to construct a centralized maintenance facility similar to what we had about 10 or 15 years ago? And I'll continue to add some questions to that. Would all of that be needed in a single budget, or could we get it covered in one or two budget cycles? What's the efficiencies we would see with such facility? For example, having everything centrally located, we probably wouldn't have trees growing in the middle of the parking lot at A.B. Sawyer. So just my opinion there. But can you answer those for me?
Sure. So the general cost is somewhere right around $5 million. I would add roughly 10% for soft costs. So 5 million, was that 500,000 or something like that? It would not have to come all at once. It could be spread out over probably 2 fiscal years, the first being design and permitting, while the second being the construction. As far as being centrally located, we did have the luxury of having a 30,000 square foot maintenance barn in Joe Creason Park. We had roughly 70 people report out of there, from forestry, landscape, athletics division. We had an entire maintenance division there. So there were efficiencies with them being centrally located in the county. Just a very short time away to jump on 65 or the Watterson or to get downtown. So there is efficiencies built into that.
Thank you. I have another question. Pools. We have 2 pools that need total rebuilds or rehabs, Fairdale, Sun Valley. I don't see those in this next year's capital plan, nor do I see them in the listed for the deferred maintenance in attachment A. Can you explain those to me?
They are not as high a priority as some of the other life safety projects on the deferred maintenance list. They are still operational pools, but we would agree that they could use investment.
My concern with that, and this is just an opinion, is we push that to a low priority continuously. Then we end up in a situation where we're rebuilding a pool like we have been doing now with Algonquin, when it could have been a couple $100,000 repair over a few years to now a $6 million new pool. I would probably rethink that a little bit. And then my last question, Chair, is in regards to golf. We have a team of golf employees, union paid. I understand golf is enterprised, but is there not a way we can do a provision on golf workers in the off season to supplement some of the park staff?
The golf employees do have additional tasks that they take on during the winter so that they are not idle during that time. So there is work to be done at our golf courses in the winter months as well. Preparing the maintenance on the equipment, for example, structural repairs, those kind of things. So that wouldn't free up a lot of employee time to do that.
We will follow up on that one.
Thank you. I'll continue that conversation with you.
Thank you. We are near the end of our scheduled time. We are near the end of our scheduled time, so the last two council members are in the queue. That's my way of saying don't bother bugging in at this point. So Councilwoman Chapel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for getting me in. My first question has to do with park rangers. And last fiscal budget, there was $300,000 put into the budget to hire a parks ranger. I spent a very, very sweaty time at the top of the Iroquois Overlook announcing this program. I was under the impression that this one park ranger was going to be overseeing just Iroquois Park, but it sounds like they're all over the place. But we have one person that's been hired. To date, in their salary, they've made about $7,000. I know that there's an expense with vehicles, so I'm assuming that with 2 part-time employees and 1 full-time employee, the maximum you would have purchased was 3 vehicles. And each one of these employees will require body cam and other accessories. So of that $300,000, how much of that has been spent to date? And how much are we anticipating to invest in this program? Another reason that I ask that is because James Brown's title is Special Police Park Senior. I can't see the rest of the title, but that position is not listed at all in the budget book under all of your positions. And so who is funding this position ongoing, and is that with that $300,000?
I'll let OB talk a little bit to the process of what went into that budget book, but that position is currently part of our budgeted positions. So that $300,000 did purchase the vehicle. It also purchased body cams and tasers. And,
one vehicle?
Yes, one vehicle, fully equipped law enforcement vehicle. So a little bit more than maybe we might think of when we think of one vehicle. So, and we do have 2 additional hires coming out of that funding as well. I'll ask Bridget to speak to that more detail.
My friend, Bridget Fraley, Executive Administrator of Park Safety and Security. Well, thank you for having me here. To answer your question, the first $300,000 we have spent intently on equipment and vehicles, the outfitting for such, uniforms. We have body cameras, tasers, guns, 1 vehicle. I have another vehicle that is in process of being purchased. The plan for the additional 2 part-time staff is that they would work together on a route together, and that comes direct from feedback from LMPD as far as needing backup if there were any issues. You know, if we are not self-sufficient and able to address an issue by ourselves and have to call LMPD every time, then we still may have a potential response lag or other issues. So that came directly from feedback from them, is that this would operate better with a partner. So the 2 part-time people will be a partner. The chief park ranger will supervise those persons, but also will do some patrol as well.
Sure. Is there an anticipated cost for this? Because in the Courier-Journal last October, it said Louisville has more than 120 parks, and cities such as large park systems typically have 25 to 35 rangers with a, quote, very large budget, Fraley said. It is unclear what funding will look like for the program in the next city budget, which will be likely passed in summer 2025. And so is there a goal to get to 35 park rangers? And it's just confusing because these seem like pseudo-police, since that is a requirement that they have 2 years of police. So why wouldn't we just have a police officer starting out dedicated to monitoring parks instead of hiring someone at a $95,000 salary dedicated to this position? It just seems kind of off. But I guess the question is, how many park rangers are you expecting in the future?
Well, I mean, the overall vision is clearly dependent on the budget that is allowed in regards to personnel and equipment. So all of that is contingent. I mean, based on our population size and some of the other metropolitan areas, they do have park ranger, full police forces that are up to 25, 30 personnel. We have 4 maintenance districts, so, I mean, if we had, 12 people, let's say 12 to 15 people in the next 3 years, I would consider that a major success. But again, all of that is contingent on budgeting and from the council and the mayor's office. So as far as the chief ranger is not only responsible for enforcement, he's responsible for building out the program. We are establishing a law enforcement agency from the ground up, which requires a lot of detail and a lot of nuances. It's a very detailed process that we are still actually working through every single day. So he is able to assist me in that because I am not a law enforcement officer. So he knows the language, he knows the need, and that is a huge portion of not only his salary, but his requirement is to help build this program so it can be successful 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now.
Sure. I just hope that an LMPD officer, former LMPD officer, is able to build a program that focuses on our parks over policing.
He is not a former LMPD officer, ma'am. He's a
With the
retired
sheriff?
He's a retired Oldham County Sheriff's Office. He has never worked for Louisville Metro Police Department, and he's actually in the council chambers if you would like to have him come introduce himself and at least tell you just a little bit
We're
about
over
him.
on time. Nope.
Yep.
My last question, I think that my colleagues may be aware that there's tennis courts at Joe Creason Park. But
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, currently, I believe it's $2.50 per court per hour, and it's proposed to go up to $10 per court per hour. And I was just wondering, do we know how much that annually makes, and then how much it's projected to make? And if that information is incorrect, it's incorrect on our website, and we need to fix that.
The $2.50 per court per hour price is the price for the tennis courts everywhere except for the Louisville Tennis Center. Those are all hard courts and other parks. The Louisville Tennis Center has its own operations. Right now, that website information is in flux because we've been working toward a new operations plan for that. That had been, I believe, in the past has been around $12 or more an hour per court. Don't have all of that information on hand. Going forward, we anticipate it to be somewhere in the $10 to $12. 10 was what we were proposing when we thought we would be operating it fully out of parks without a license agreement with an operator, but we have been able to pursue that, which means that that building will be able to be staffed, which means there are indoor bathrooms available instead of porta pots. So if it does indeed end up as a $12 cost, I think that the additional couple dollars is probably worth it for most of our tennis players at Creason to have access to the building itself and those restrooms, and to have on-site staff maintaining the courts daily.
Sure. I'd still be interested to see how much that center made last year.
Yeah, we are, we'll be going back and gathering up all of the information that we can get from that
Thank you.
previous operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Parker, you will have the last word.
Yes, Jason Canuel. Real quick, I'm sorry. Joe Creason Park. So, just to clarify, you said that the footprint is already there for the centralized facilities maintenance, and your estimated cost for that is $5 million, and you said the cost would be reduced if you could get it back there. Do you have any idea if it would, how much less it would be than $5 million if we put it there, and what do you need for us to get that done? Because we talk about it every year, and it never happens.
Even though with the footprint being there, I still think the $5 million number is going to be the correct range. Again, we don't have a set of plans. It's not been designed or drawn. But I would still think that the $5 million is the number we would use.
So we need to budget for the plans first.
Correct.
And do you have any idea how much a design plan would be?
A very high estimate would be 10% of the $5 million.
Okay, thanks.
Seeing no one else in the queue, that's the last question for our Parks hearing. So thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. We will move to the next hearing, and that will be the Office of Social Services, we are already 9 minutes late for Social Services, so as soon as they are set up, we will begin. Looks like you guys are set. Director Swetnam, are we close to ready? I'm going to hit go if you say it's okay. See here, that's fine.
I think we're ready to go.
Ms. Williams?
Ready, thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, this is the last hearing for today. Welcome back. Again, Councilman Kevin Kramer, Chair of the Budget Committee, joined by my Vice Chair, Councilman Winkler. I am going to go ahead and read off who's currently here. I know a couple people had to dart out for a couple different reasons, but I'm joined in council by Councilman Owen, Councilman Piagentini, Councilwoman McCraney, Councilwoman Woolridge, and Councilwoman Chappell. There are some others that will be coming back in, no doubt, and I will go ahead and as people come in, I will call on them. So we already have the notice for the virtual meeting, I believe. Is it? It's holdover. Good. So this is our final meeting today. As a reminder, departments will not make opening comments, and we will begin immediately with council members' questions. Welcome, Directors Williams and Swetnam. The Office of Social Services has a proposed $35 million operating budget. FY22 approved budget had $15 million in federal grant expectations, but it appears it was not awarded. But another $15 million is expected in FY26. What grant did we not receive, and why are we expecting an equal grant in the coming year?
So, Josh Swetnam, Director, Office of Social Services. And I will certainly tag in some of my colleagues for some additional detail, but certainly we are set to receive all of the HUD funding that we received this year. Again, we are expecting renewal of those grants. The primary funding that has lapsed is the federal ERAP funding. So as you may be aware, the city since 2021 has had significant assistance through the ERAP program and COVID CARES funding. That was a significant contributor to eviction prevention and rent assistance. Those funds have been fully expended. So we know that those funds are not going to be available in FY26.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilman Winkler.
Thank you. Several years ago, we passed the Right to Counsel ordinance, and basically legal aid provides the service for eviction counseling. Does this budget adequately fund the legal aid ask that's necessary to support the intent of that ordinance?
So I would, as far as right to counsel, we know there's $300,000 in external agency funds directly to legal aid in the FY26 budget. So this is an identical amount to what was provided in the last fiscal year budget for right to counsel. So we believe that funding has remained consistent.
How quickly did we go through that amount of money last year?
I'm not sure how long that funding lasted. Go ahead.
In reference to the 300,000, is that the question?
Yes, the question was, we had money in the budget last year, and it looks like the question was, is this year's going to be sufficient? One way to gauge that would be if we had 300,000 last year and we spent it in the first 4 months, might not have been enough. But if we had 300,000 in the budget last year and we had 20,000 left at the end of the year, then clearly it was enough. And if we had 150,000 left, then we gave you too much. So we're trying to get a sense of where that might be.
So majority of that budget is allocated towards salaries and fringe benefits. So it is spread pretty evenly across the year, and they submit those receipts for the salaries.
Hi, Christina Bunch, Social Service Policy and Advocacy Manager for the Plan Compliance Team at OSS. They are currently on schedule with their budget. They have not spent it all. They had some budget left over from the Office of Housing and Community Development last year, so they didn't dip into this money until a little bit later. So they are right on target. They tell us that they're going to go ahead and fully expend the money, but there's not any worry that they're going to not fully spend it.
But I don't think, my understanding, because the organization reached out to me directly, my understanding is they did ask for more than what they got, right? I think they asked for $50,000 and they got $20,200. I think that's just the general fund allocation. And I believe there are 3 other buckets that they were underfunded relative to their ask. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So they did get some money for their TAP program. They got some for HOPWA, but they did not get project help through ESG or through EAF. They were below the threshold for funding that the panel set.
So I didn't have this question, but what you just said is interesting, given the conversation we had yesterday about external agency, particularly related to the one of the, I can't remember if you testified on HOPWA yesterday.
Yes.
What I understood you to say yesterday is, with how, I think the discussion was in response to a question Councilwoman Parrish Wright had asked about House of Ruth, and one of the things that you said is there's relatively few organizations that are eligible for HOPWA funding because that is earmarked for a specific purpose. Are we expending 100% of the HOPWA funding we have? And if we do have smaller organizations that serve that population, have we set, and I know this isn't external agency question, and I apologize but have we potentially then set regulations in that grant process that are too high, that are eliminating other organizations that would otherwise be eligible?
I don't believe so, sir. We do try to offer technical assistance to anyone that asks during the grant process. We try to offer extra training and things, so I don't necessarily think.
Okay, so not to take up time and I would love to get a little bit more detail about why they didn't qualify under the HOPWA. If they asked for HOPWA money and they didn't qualify.
They did get HOPWA, sir. Yeah, they did.
Okay.
They did. They fully got their ask. So they got HOPWA, and then they did get TAP funding. I believe that was the CDBG. It is CDBG. They just didn't get project help, which has been historically funded through ESG and through EAF.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I apologize, I did not mean to get off on a tangent about those questions. So I've got 2 questions related to the neighborhood place and LIHEAP support. Can you talk about the Charmoli Center? I don't believe we have LIHEAP assistance there in the budget, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just talk a little bit about the status of that center that, offers all of the services of the neighborhood place, and is it funded appropriately? And then, I know Councilwoman Shanklin isn't here, but I would be remiss if I did not ask about the neighborhood place that is it Thomas Jefferson Elementary, I believe? They no longer will have space there. What is the plans for where that is moving? And is that reflected in the budget?
Absolutely. So regarding Charmoli Neighborhood Place, we do have LIHEAP services that operate out of that facility. We have LIHEAP seasonal staff as well as our OSS staff who manage the program and implement the service. And so we have had those services operating out of Charmoli where our residents can come and schedule appointments at that center.
Okay. I don't think that's listed on the dashboard, so it may just be that the website is out of date and doesn't reflect that that is a service that's offered.
So Charmoli did close several years back and then reopened. And one of the primary features of Neighborhood Place is the collaboration between multiple agencies, including Department of Community-Based Services, and particularly the family support programs like food stamps and other benefits. And so those, post-COVID, those state employees have been returning slowly back to neighborhood places, but those services have not reopened at Charmoli as of yet, and so that reduces our foot traffic. And so there may be an issue with updating the service array at Charmoli. We've worked to make sure that it accurately reflects what's offered there, but we do have LIHEAP services available at our neighborhood place sites, including Charmoli. Regarding First Neighborhood Place, which is located at Thomas Jefferson Middle School, there's a major project with JCPS that's well underway. The new high school, Du Bois High School, that's being built in the back, in the back of that property. And so as that project has moved along, it's necessitated some changes. So we know that this summer, they are going to have to demolish the, what they call the Bruce Building, which is the larger building towards the back of the Parker lot. That is where the DCBS staff are currently residing. They're going to have to locate somewhere else. And our staff in the office located within Thomas Jefferson Middle School will have to also relocate to one of our other neighborhood place sites while they renovate space within Thomas Jefferson to accommodate not only our Metro staff, but also JCPS and DCBS staff. And so that's going to be a significant renovation of that space, which will be nice to have kind of a refreshed, somewhat new space. But it is also going to be more of a tight space because we're going to combine two buildings and two staffing populations into one, but we do plan to have those services open and available come the fall. So it's going to be a very quick turnaround with working with JCPS on that project.
So that office, if I understood correctly, those employees are going to be dispersed somewhere else and then eventually come back. Yes. Is there an opportunity in the budget to find a short-term lease to maintain service in or you can't maintain it in the location, obviously, because the building's being torn down, but as close as possible? Is that something that we have looked at, and could we get a budget estimate for what that would entail?
Councilman, we can certainly look into that and provide some additional information. I'm going to turn it over to Cassandra Miller, Executive Administrator of Neighborhood Place, with additional information.
Cassandra Miller, Executive Administrator. So there's going to be kind of two projects that happens on that same campus at First Neighborhood Place. The main building, there's a main building in what Director Swetnam called the Bruce Building. There's two buildings on the same campus. When the main building goes under renovation, the staff from the main building is going to relocate back to the Bruce Building. So there will be a full complement of staff and services that remains on that campus. Once the main building is ready for staff to move back in, all the staff that's back in the Bruce Building will move to the main building, and the Bruce Building will come down because it's part of the JCPS Du Bois project.
Okay, so just to say it another way, the services will still be offered in the same, maybe not in the exact same building, but in the same campus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the Vice Chair did more than two questions, but I will keep mine to two to stick with the format. Yeah, that's true. First, on looking through your capital projects, so it's not a lot as opposed to parks. But, I'm looking at, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4 projects here. The largest one being the VOA Veterans Housing on Dixie Highway project. Your total balance of these 4 projects is 6.1 million. 5 million is unencumbered, unspent, and, or a little over 5 million. The 5 million of that is the VOA project. So this is something that I know this council and others, some of which aren't on council anymore, fought very hard for. Can somebody update us on what's going on here?
Councilman Piagentini, I believe that is a project being handled through Office of Housing and Community Development. I don't believe it's in the OSS budget, but I can also defer to OMB for additional information. I'm sorry, so the funding is split between OSS and OHCD, but OHCD is managing the entire project.
Okay, when are they coming? Does anybody know when they're coming? Office of Housing and Community Development, do we know when they're coming? June 2nd, okay, thank you, LaTanya. Okay, so I'll ask them. So, but I don't understand. You said it's between both of you, is that correct? What does that mean? No, you can't come up, Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor George.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Nicole George, Public Health and Public Services. So just to be fair to say, I can't account for the money, and someone from OMB can certainly come up. I do know that this project is managed out of housing. I think the last update we got is that they started site preparation recently, and they're expected to complete it by September of 2026.
Okay.
The Watson Lane RFP will be out next week.
Okay.
So that's the most up-to-date that I have, but I would encourage you to also speak with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, appreciate that. And then the other one is, I'm looking at a breakdown, let me make sure I get this right. One of the questions we had asked, a list of line items in the detailed budget with, quote, significant change from fiscal year '25 in a chart. So we have federal funds, external agency contracts, grant support services, professional supplies, and emergency assistance, okay? Inside, okay, let me back up, sorry. The fiscal year '26 budget is for $6.5 million, $6,527,600. But page 187 only lists the following projects underneath that, under the Office of Social Services, and it lists a bunch of projects. Dare to Care, Goodwill, Hope Bus, Public Schools Neighborhood Place, which may be what Vice Chair Winkler was just talking about. The VITA program, 7 counties, SOS Local Health Program, Volunteers for America, the Healing Place, Society for St. Vincent de Paul. That all adds up to just short of 4.4 million. $4,397,600. We're just trying to figure out the discrepancy. So you have contracts that you're saying are budgeted for $6,527,000, but the listed contracts only add up to $4,397,000. Yeah, right, where's the other 2 million? Yes, exactly. That helped, I actually didn't have that in my head.
Hi, I'm Nikki Gordon. I'm a fiscal coordinator for OMB and help with OSS. I think you said 2 million was the difference?
Correct, approximately.
Approximately. So about 1.1, almost 1.2 million is for the homeless division, HART. They have additional contracts that they will set in place. They have not chosen those. They put those out for a separate competitive process. Those just aren't chosen at the beginning of the year because typically they are for the winter months. I'm sorry, I might have missed it, but I'm not sure if you named the community ministries as part of that.
No.
They are part of this budget. So while they are listed in the back of the EAF or the external agency list,
right,
community ministries is part of that 6.5.
And how much was being given to them?
1.6 right now. So also the 750,000, that is the competitive amount, is not in that because it is always restricted. So it's going to be under the restricted line item. Sorry, I have an entire list that I can
So
send you.
let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And this was, and again, I will support the idea that we aggregated all these contract projects into the EAF section, except a whole bunch of them used to be in other departments, and this is kind of the problem, like, it's in the books, so like, that's where your eyeball goes, and now we have to remember, okay, bring this project over this department, et cetera. Let's do this. We have a discrepancy. If we can just get a detailed breakdown, because even the two things, and I am so sorry, what's your name again, ma'am? Nikki, thank you. Even the two projects you mentioned, that comes out to like 2.6 million, which is a little bit more than what the discrepancy is here. So if we can get from OMB clarity on the budget is 6.5 million, right? Even though it might be reflected in other areas, like this is what makes that up. If we can get that via email afterwards, I saw the thumbs up from Aaron, thank you. That would be great. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Reno Weber.
And if this is connected to that, it might be able to be served in the same way, but just a full list of all the nonprofits that are being funded in this budget in a way that just lists them. And is this part of a granting process, which makes sense for some of the things that we're doing, but also, or is this a contract? And I think about, I understand that we have a contract with Maryhurst around some of the work that they're doing, but that's a contract of, hey, it makes more sense for us to be not having those services internally. That's an external contract. So I would love to see that full list and those amounts somewhere.
We can create an aggregated list and get that too.
That'd be great, because to Councilman Piagentini's point, they're in some different spots and some of them are not visible. Okay, and then speaking of which, can you talk a little bit to the process by which you've said in here, okay, great, this is services that we believe that we should provide within our department, but we think it's better to contract with a local nonprofit versus this is what we have chosen to internalize with staff.
So, we do have a wonderful team at OSS, and it's very valuable work, and they do wonderful work, but we know we can't do everything. And we don't have expertise in every field. At the same time, we know that there are a host of nonprofits who do great work in the community, and I feel like OSS, in addition to being kind of the crucial safety net for the community, is also a hub of connection for social services and nonprofit work. So I think the simplest answer is that we know that there's value in partnering so that we can have greater reach and greater impact and support the work, because as Metro government, we're not able to meet all the needs ourselves.
Okay. Can you speak a little bit to some of the resources that you all are deploying to street outreach and how you're thinking about from a context of building those relationships versus what you are doing in-house versus? Sure. Thank you.
Yep. John Pilbeam, Assistant Director, OSS. I lead the Homeless Services team. Can you kind of repeat that just for me, just so I can make sure?
Can you speak a little bit to how you are thinking about staffing internally to continue to do that work, or versus contracting some of that out? I know we've talked about community health workers in the past, and I'd just love for you to speak a little bit to how that has evolved and what that looks like in the budget.
Sure. So when I first started 3 years ago, I was the outreach person. We've developed that to a team now of 10 on our outreach team. We have a supervisor, 2 coordinators, and 7, we call them HROs, Homeless Resource Outreach Specialists. When those folks did come on, they were making $16.70 an hour. We fought now to get them raised up to almost $21.50 before the July pay increase, right? So we're getting somebody with maybe a little more education than we were getting before. Past partners have done a fantastic job, but we felt like we could direct those individuals a little better if they were in staff in-house, and that's why we brought them in.
I would be remiss if I were not asking about how we are thinking about credentialing those folks and potentially offsetting some of the costs by billing some of our favorite federal agencies, namely Medicaid.
Yes, sir. So there are currently, I have 2 community health workers. The rest are being trained in community health worker. And then we have 3 that are peer support specialists working and going, I think, an additional 3 to be peer support specialists to meet the qualifications.
That's excellent. Do we have a sense of what the revenue projections on that might be in this budget system? Not yet.
I can speak to that with, again, we can get you some very specific projections looking at the amount per unit. Our primary goal is to build Medicaid this year and to build that over time so that it becomes a substantial revenue stream. So, yeah, we can definitely get those projections. I don't have them on hand, but, we are, as we've talked about before, we're looking at starting with community health workers. And John's team does have certified CHWs, and we are going to begin the process of getting staff in other branches of OSS credentialed. So just to give you another update, while we have applied for our own Medicaid number in OSS so we can bill for behavioral health, I guess that's maybe the last time that I was here and we spoke about it, what we realized is that community health work is a medical service. It's not a behavioral health service. And so Louisville Metro already has the innate capacity for that and is doing it out of public health. And so we have partnered with public health, and Dr. Single has agreed to serve as our rendering provider so that we can go ahead and just launch those CHW services out of OSS while we keep working on the behavioral health. And so we've had several meetings with public health to kind of prepare for that billing feature and making sure that we've got all our ducks in a row so that we can submit those claims.
Warms my heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would point out we've been joined by Councilman Reno Weber, and we've also been joined by Councilwoman McCraney, Councilman Herndon, and Councilman Linenger since I first announced. Councilman Winkler.
Question, and this might be directed at Deputy Mayor George, because it's a little bit broader than just your department. If we were to fund a 23 or 24-hour drop-in center a la the neighborhood, like the living room, would we anticipate that falling under this department or the health department? I think it was under the health department previously, if I remember correctly. Because if you anticipate the health department, then I'll hold all those questions till we get to the health department.
So the answer is yes, it was previously under the health department. I think when we talk about a drop-in center, we have to be very clear about what problem we're hoping to solve. So are we hoping to use a drop-in center as a place for people who are street homeless, who are trying to come in and make a plan at any hours of the day? Or is this more of an urgent care for those experiencing behavioral health crisis? And so I know there are lots of good conversations to be had in the community, and I know there are different degrees of understanding of what problem we're trying to solve. If we're trying to solve 24-hour shelter for those who are street homeless, then certainly that, from my opinion, would be well seated in the Office of Social Services. If we are solving a behavioral health crisis that's more like urgent care. So for instance, someone's child is in college, they come home, they need a med adjustment, that may or may not be the Office of Social Services. So when we talk about drop-in in something that may or may not look like what we refer to formerly as the living room, I would say it depends on the problem we're trying to solve in terms of where it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. There is no one else in the queue. So I have a council member who just darted out on the way who wanted to speak, but unless someone has a question to stall, I was never very good at, stand-up comedy. So this is not stand-up comedy. It's a budget question. Okay, you're on.
Okay, all right. I know that you had spoken about the area community ministries that are included in this budget, and you have a line for emergency assistance. Yesterday, when we were talking about ACM, we learned that 7 of those 13 organizations, that money went directly towards operating costs and not towards programs like emergency assistance. And so while we're waiting on that information, I don't know if you all would be able to get how much your office provides versus the ACMs, and that way we could understand the total amount that we have dedicated in Louisville Metro for emergency assistance. Or do you have that number off the top of your head?
I think I can partially answer, and then, of course, we can always get back with additional information. We We do, through our planning and compliance team, we do get reports from community ministries, and so we might be able to receive that breakdown from them, but I can speak to OSS. So just to mention a little bit of history, I mentioned the ERAP funding, which was not only being administered through our office, but also Housing and Community Development had a partnership with ACM. And I think this was before our time here at Metro, but I believe that the purpose was to make sure that all of that funding, which was significant, could be channeled to the community in the most efficient way possible. So, I believe they had success in partnering together, ACM and OHCD, but as that money has run out, then the OHCD is no longer in the business of helping administer eviction prevention funds. So in that way, it mirrors what we face at OSS, basically the ending of ERAP funding. And so another piece that, as we have learned more about the budget with OSS and our grants, we realized there was carry forward in previous years, which we have tried to make sure that we spend down this year to be in compliance with our grant agreements. And so we are really looking at $1.3 million in general funds for eviction prevention in FY26. That mirrors what was in general funds last year. The difference is that we had other additional pots of money to help with eviction prevention. So it's not a reduction in terms of our general fund budget, but in terms of what's available overall, there's less just because of certain funding streams ending. And so
Have you had increases, though? You're at 849,000 in fiscal year '25. This year, you're asking for nearly, 1.3, a little over 1.3. So that's an increase in funding, correct?
So there was 1.3 million, but between some different line items. So I believe it's just been merged in the line item for this year's budget, but the total, and I may ask Nikki Gordon, but just the amounts were in different lines, but combined, that was the total of what we had to work with last year. And so I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
Sure, I'm just trying to understand, I don't even know what the need is, but at that 1.3 plus whatever ACM is offering, and I'm assuming that maybe LIHEAP is part of that 1.3?
LIHEAP is not included in that amount. So the amount that we're, the 1.3 is truly for, at least in the OSS budget, is truly financial assistance provided to the community. So again, speaking for our department, that amount is truly passed on to our neighbors. We have our existing team. We are not asking for any increase in our staffing complement, but with the team that we have, we believe that we can serve as many people as possible with the funding that's available. And of course, any additional funding, we would have the capacity already to distribute that to the community. So that funding truly is being distributed to our neighbors.
Sure, I just want to be able to say Louisville Metro has $3 million in the community that is for the community for, among all these partners that work with Louisville Metro. I just want to have an idea for that number. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilman Owen. You might
You had asked about, sorry.
step to the
Lynette
mic.
Lau,
Please
President-
introduce yourself.
Lynette Lau, President of the Association of Community Ministries. So I wondered if I just might address the question that you had about community ministries that was, you mentioned yesterday. It is the case that 7 of the 13 of us do use our Metro money to go directly towards administrative costs. And that is because Metro funds are one of the only funds that we have available to us that are available for administrative costs. Many of the grants that we receive are strictly for direct client assistance and can't be used that way. And we have to have people to do the work. It's also the case that we report quarterly to OSS, and we report on all of those funds and how they're used. It's also true that if we're looking to see, like, okay, so if you're spending all of your money to go to administrative costs, what's going out into the community? So in the first 9 months of 23-24, we got an increase last year of $275,000. Thanks to the council. In that first 9 months, if we compare those 9 months to the first 9 months of this year there was an additional $318,000 in assistance that went out into the community. And that was an increase of 8% in the number of services that were provided, right? So we got $275,000 additional, and we put in an additional $318,000 out into the community. So it's clear that the money that's coming from Metro is being added to and put back out into the community. So what happens when Metro money funds our administrative costs is that frees up ministry money to serve directly to clients. Does that help?
Sure. It seems like we have less than $2 million in Louisville Metro dedicated to emergency assistance is what it sounds like to me. But again, I understand that you all won't have those numbers off the cuff.
Right. So, I mean, currently I can speak to ACM. We're currently funded at 1.4 million. The mayor's budget came across with 1.65 million in it for us. For this coming year. We're currently in this fiscal year at 1.4. ACM is coming to council requesting an increase to 2.5 million because of what we see coming down the pike in terms of increased need and decreased federal assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Owen.
I didn't know I was in the queue.
I'm sorry, Councilman Reno Weber.
You would be far from the first person to have confused the two of us.
Honestly, I don't, I read Councilman Owen.
I'll take it as a compliment. I don't know how he takes it.
I read it.
Actually, that answered my question. So the total ask for ACM is 2.5 for this coming year in order to meet the clearly increasing needs. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I fully understand that and I fully support that.
Councilwoman Woolridge.
Yeah, I noticed that there is a grant that is not continuing this next year. That's for the Federal Emergency Rental Assistance Program to help with evictions, preventions, assistance, and case management. How much is going to be available in '26 with that grant going away?
Could you repeat that very last portion, please?
Yeah, how much is going to be available for assistance with that grant going away?
It's the 1.3 million. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, knowing that there has been the slow reduction in federal funding over the past several years, specifically for eviction prevention, we realize that our people are one of our greatest assets in terms of being able to provide intensive case management, specifically at helping folks reach their goals and achieve greater stability. That's something that we focused on in our new 3-year action plan as well through OSS. And so our team, for those who come in for assistance and are willing to work on some medium-term goals that will help them achieve greater stability, our team wraps around them with some very intensive case management. And so that is, I think, in an era where there is less funding at the federal level, we view that as our long-term plan to try to help support the community by walking alongside folks and helping connect them with resources out in the community in addition to what Metro provides.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
For the record, case management within Medicaid is code T1016, T1017, and if it's on a monthly basis that hits a minimum of 15 hours, it's T2022.
Now, that's in the record, guys.
And we have to have the right modifiers for those as well, depending on who we serve.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Director Swetnam and Director Williams. That concludes our budget hearing for this afternoon. We will begin again tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock.